Hi guys, Steve Good here with the Scroll Saw Workshop. In this video, I want to talk about a question that I get pretty often over on the Scroll Saw Workshop blog, and that is, which scroll saw should I buy? Now, this video is not going to talk about the brand or the type of scroll saw. It's specifically going to talk about the size of the scroll saw and what difference it makes in what you are able to cut. Typically, when you go out to buy a scroll saw, one of the numbers you'll see is it'll say a 20-inch scroll saw, a 21-inch scroll saw, or a 16-inch scroll saw, or some number like that. And what that refers to is the distance between the back of the scroll saw and where the blade goes through the table. So a typical popular scroll saw is the DeWalt DW788, and it has a 20-inch throat. And that, again, is the measurement between the back of the saw and where the blade goes through the table. In this graphic up here, I want to show you what we're going to talk about today. This graphic shows a representation of an 11-inch by 14-inch board in comparison to the size of a man. So you can see this is a fairly large board, and this would be a large scroll saw project for most people. Most scroll saw projects are not that large and can easily be cut out of smaller boards than this. But I wanted to show this size simply because this is about the limit of the size of a pattern that I will produce for the scroll saw. Typically they're all considerably smaller than this. Now you'll run into some scroll saw projects that are physically larger than this, but they'll often be made up of multiple pieces that are cut out of boards this size or smaller. For an example of that would be a large fretwork clock. It would be made out of maybe 20, 30, 40 pieces that are all cut from smaller boards and then put together. In the center of the screen here, we have a top view of a 21-inch scroll saw. So again, from where the blade goes through the table, represented by this little dot, to the back of the saw is 21 inches on this example. Here's an example of a 16-inch scroll saw. The blade goes through the table. Here's the back of the cut. So we have a 16-inch throat. This is a scaled version of that 11-inch by 14-inch board. In this example, we're going to show an extreme. We're going to cut a very small circle in the extreme corner of this board. To do that with a flat scroll saw blade, we have to rotate the board around the blade to cut the circle. Now this is different with a spiral blade, obviously, so keep in mind that we can extend the range of the scroll saw by using a spiral blade at some loss of accuracy, but we can talk about that later. So you can see right now, if we take this 11-inch by 14-inch board and rotate it around this blade, which is what we have to do to make this cut, you can see that we have plenty of room from the back edge of this board to the back of the saw. So we can easily rotate this board around and cut that circle out of that board. Here is that same representation on a 16-inch scroll saw. You'll see as we rotate this around, the board will contact the back of the saw and not allow us to complete that cut. So this is an extreme example because we're cutting out here on the very edge and we're cutting a fairly large board. I would say that 95%, if not more, of the patterns that I produce over at the Scroll Saw Workshop would require a board considerably smaller than this to cut out the pieces. So you can see that with a 16-inch scroll saw, if you decided to go that purchase route, you're just barely going to miss being able to cut that extreme circle out here at the very corner of the board. You'll be able to see that if we just change that center of rotation just slightly and we rotate that board around, we make it. So most of your projects, by far the majority for the average scroller, you will be able to cut on a 16-inch scroll saw. Now, is it nice to have this extra depth on those occasions where you do need a larger cut? Yes, it is. But don't rule out a 16-inch scroll saw just because that's the popular choice. And by popular choice, I mean that probably 90% of all scroll saws sold in America today are the 20-inch or larger scroll saws. Now, you can find a scroll saw all the way up to 30 inches, and unless you have a particular need for a saw that size, I don't recommend it because you'll very seldom ever use that much distance, and if you do need that much distance, you'll know it before you buy that saw. Now, quickly, let's go back and talk about the difference that it makes if we use a spiral blade. Now, on a spiral blade, we don't have to pivot the board around the blade because the blade will cut in any direction. So you can see that if we go up to here, we could easily cut that with a spiral blade with no problem at all. Okay, I hope this helps a little bit. I'm Steve Good with the Scroll Saw Workshop, and we'll catch you next time.